Welcome back to the podcast, Mr. Kerry Rhodes.
Hello. How are you? I haven't seen you in a while.
I know, it's been a whole
It's been a couple hours.
24 hours, I think.
Yeah.
I wanted to bring you back on because I really wanted to share some of our normal conversations that we have daily with my audience. And it's a lot about what I'm noticing with kind of this brainwashing effect of society and how our perceptions can be so different than, our neighbors' perceptions of things. And I kind of I'm really curious as to why that is and why, how people can coexist in the world on Earth and see things completely opposite.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we talked about this a little bit. I mean, I inherently believe that we are a product of our environment, right? We prescribe to things. And then, once we start to prescribe to things, we start to get pigeonholed in this place where the information that we receive are from the same sources, right? So there's no outside influence. You usually have this tunnel vision of when you feel like you're in your group,
right,
or your tribe, or whatever that is, you're getting the same information all the time. And I think once people get comfortable in that place of feeling familiar with something, they usually ride with that, right? And so they're not, I think the blinders are on at that point, and they only are available to the things that they want to be available for. And so you have these people that, like ourselves, who are interested in so many different things, and we have interest in other different places and other different things as well. We're not going to be pigeonholed to one source of anything. And so I think that's where it starts, being put in a place where that's the information that I'm receiving. Does it feel good? Does it work for me at that time? Okay, then that's what I'm going to believe. And then you don't go anywhere else with it. Right. That's where I think it starts.
No, that makes sense. I mean, it definitely makes sense. My question is, if enough people are receiving even the exact same information, the exact same facts, the exact same everything, that they were born during the same time, but yet they have two completely different perceptions of what's reality and what's false. And so that's where I get so into this idea that maybe there's, I don't know if it's like a time loop. I don't even know what you would want to call it, but like there's so much talk about two Earths. Oh, there's two Earths, or there's two realities, and there's a 3D, and there's a 5D, and there's all these different dimensions, right?
Right.
But how is it that you could live on different dimensions, but yet in the same physical place? It doesn't. That doesn't kind of compute in my human mind.
It does, because the ascension of the human mind in general, the ascension of the consciousness as a whole, right? Some people are still stuck in a format that's comfortable for them, and so that the nature of where they are, they can't really ascend from that because they're operating at what they think is a pretty good level, right? Where people...
based on frequency? Like, so would it be based on like, okay, this is my frequency, so I'm operating on this
100%
level.
frequency. Like, if the frequency feels right to them, then that's what they're going to operate from. But, and I think that holds true even for us, where like when we're in the right frequency, we know that, we feel that, and it's nothing about it feels wrong, foreign, any of that thing. So the same thing for them. And I think where the beauty of that is I think when you get to a point of a higher ascension or a higher consciousness as a person, you have this ability to see them for where they are and where they're at, and not have to agree with it, but also know that that doesn't affect me. They can be there and we can be here and help to continue to raise it. Where when they're on this level, they can't see beyond it. And that's the part that's hard, because it can get irritating for us, or it can get, we can get upset about it sometimes, right? Because we're looking at the same information. We're looking at the same stuff.
The same facts or
and
the same...
And you have this idea of it, which
Right.
makes no sense. And then even when you go further of, we have the same information, if there's any bit of a doubt, we're going to look into it and be like, let me see what this is. This doesn't feel 100% aligned.
Yeah.
Where they will be like, or I'm not going to say they, but the people in that frequency will feel that same thing, but not think that it's anything that's catastrophic to them or
It won't change
anything.
It won't change their mind typically. But it's funny because when you say like levels, and I don't ever think of myself as like on a higher level, right? So because to be real, it's like we don't know. What if we're on the lower frequency? What if we're on the ascended part, versus the ascended? So it's like how I don't know. It's how do you really tell? I just feel like it's almost like we can all have different perspectives and all see things so differently.
Right.
But how do you still have compassion? Keep your heart open and understand that everybody's coming from a different place. But it is really, really interesting that the programming that's happened, especially over the past, I want to say, I mean, it's happened forever, but for sure it was increased in the 50s and 60s and 70s. And we started to have this thing where this was our reality. And this is what our parents told us, what school told us, and how that was learned, whether it was history, which I know you have major issues with what they taught for history.
Yes, I do. Yeah. Another day.
Another day.
That's a whole other podcast for sure.
But I think what came to light for me was like the sports was sports, and really what was being done in the sports community with, this idea that started to come out, and it started to come out, I think, with Damar Hamlin, with the whole cardiac arrest incident on the field, and then him starting to come out and say, he basically took a stance and said that there needed to be AEDs on all athletic youth sports fields because it was the number one leading cause of sports-related trauma, and it was the number one cause of death in young athletes. And this really kind of struck me as something where it was like, well, I had never heard that before. Right. And, having two boys, being with you for, so over the years, I just never even, it would never have even crossed my mind that would have been a truth. Right. And so now we're having somebody who the, major incident in the NFL happened, not come out and directly say why it happened, and then claims this is happening now to all of our athletic youth, which in my research prior to 2021, I think there were, I wrote it, I just started writing stuff down because I was just like, this doesn't sit well with me. Prior to 2021, there were 29 reported cardiac arrests in the UK sports per year. And since 2021, the number rose to almost 1,500. Right, so the increase is so significant and so shocking, and I think it's basically said 2/3 of those were fatal, and we were seeing it televised on television. This is where my first thought of this kind of brainwashing effect can happen, where all of a sudden on Wikipedia and all these places that I was doing research, the narrative was changing. Remember when we were kids, it was heat stroke. Heat stroke 100%. Was huge that's the one, for sports. For sure. And that's what would take players out. That would be so. Can you maybe shed a little bit of light on just that topic alone and how it's being used as a way to rewrite history? Yeah. It's always a rewrite when it comes to history, right? Because history is something that's happened in the past. So as you change and as times evolve, obviously that
can change. But I think the real question, the stuff that you can really ponder about that is what's causing that to be the new norm, or what's causing that to be the thing that's affecting top tier athletes. It doesn't compute these, because we test for that stuff. We do our yearly physicals for the year to play, and if you have any heart issues, it's always brought up to you. And so, they're not gonna, as a product, the NFL, they're not gonna put somebody out there that has heart issues that are keeping them from playing
right.
or potentially passing out or potentially passing away with their company. So it doesn't make sense from that standpoint, number one.
Right.
But if it's changed since 2021, I have been out for the game for a while. I don't know what that would entail with them. Are there liability waivers that they're giving these kids now, or all, like, there's so many different things that could be in effect with that. But when it comes to the numbers, definitely not the number one cause of athletes, not being able to play football anymore or passing away. But that's something that's foreign. That's something that's never happened during my time, and I've been around the game for a long time. So for it to be that way, it's always kind of fishy for me when these numbers spike or raise the way they are. It's the cause belong for me is what's the real reason behind what's causing the cardiac arrest and that stuff. It's not about being on the field and dying from a heart attack. It just doesn't happen.
Right.
Yeah.
One, I think we were seeing more and more, whether it was football or it was
soccer.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. Mm-hmm. In the UK, I guess it is football.
That is, yeah.
Just also sports across the board. I mean, there were people just passing out, and we were seeing. I feel like that was being seen a lot.
And why? And why were they showing it? That's the question.
Right.
Why were they showing it now? Again, we're being so desensitized because we're seeing these things happen in front of our eyes, right?
Do you mean why were they showing?
Why were they showing all these things happening and broadcasting it and putting it out there for the world to see if it wasn't fear-inducing or trying to cause fear around the topic of what that is? Because again, even the people passing out or dying from heat exhaustion, we weren't seeing these videos. We weren't seeing these things published. We weren't seeing these things shown to the public. It'll be a little story about it.
But I feel like it was more, and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like it was more, it wasn't professional sports that those things were happening.
A few times.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I always felt like it was like a football, like a
high school
football.
For sure, it would be something like a high school student. But they're showing high school students passing away now from having these attacks happen, and they're showing that and they're putting it out there. So it's not about the high school, pro, or college anymore. They're putting it out there for a reason for it to be seen. But what is the reason that it's being seen? Is what I
because I don't, and then my theory is that I don't think they expected these things to happen. I think when whether it was, here's the speculation part. They wanted everything to be speculative, right? So if it's the vaccine, right, the COVID vaccine, then the boosters and all this stuff, if it was that, then I don't think that these people were prepared or had any idea of the risks or the side effects of that specific vaccine. I mean, let's be very frank. It's not, it wasn't well tested, right? By any means.
To say the least.
And to put it into our youth and into our athletes and anybody, whether it was a senator or a politician, which you're seeing more and more people come out with strokes and Ramsey, what is it called? The Ramsey Huntington. It's, oh my gosh. So I was just reading an article about Dianne Feinstein. I don't know if you got to see the picture of her coming back into office, but it was fairly alarming. Her eye was messed up. Just the whole thing was alarming. and it came out that she had suffered from Huntington disease, which was also linked to what Justin Bieber came out and said he had.
Yeah.
So it's these big profile figures, and they're all of a sudden debilitated.
Right.
We've never seen that before in our lifetime, and my concern is that, not even a concern, it's very obvious that is now what they want people to see as the norm. And like, this is normal. And it's like, no, that's
not normal.
It's not normal to be sick.
Yeah.
It's not normal to have a debilitating disease or to have a random stroke. I mean, we don't even know what happened to Jamie Foxx. There's these things that we're not being told, that slowly over time it starts to change the narrative.
Not even that it's not being told. Those people aren't even speaking on it. So why aren't they speaking on what it is clearly?
Right.
You said that DeMar Hamlin said that, but feels very, very scripted in what he says. Everything that he's doing right now, I mean, he's the poster boy for all those things right now because it happened in front of a live audience, right? So now we have to get in front of it, say this is what it is and this is whatever.
Right.
As that company progresses, right? So it's all about the NFL and the shield when it comes to their product. So they want to let people know that this is normal. This is a thing that's happening to people now, and we're going to allow him to come back and play now because he's safe. We've done the safety checks, and so they're giving the poster boy a chance to go back out and
and play.
Do it again.
Well, I think that's the other thing. They're bringing Feinstein back and having her vote on things, even though, was it yesterday or the day before, the LA Times confronted her and said, how are you feeling being back? And she literally said, I've always been here. I never left. I've always been voting. And it was such a weird comment because it just made it so shockingly obvious that she wasn't even cognitively aware that she was gone for 3 months.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, well,
Lady, you were absent for a period of time. You were not here. Right.
But she's getting so old that when is it a total injustice to keep her in there? Yes. Well, she should be rested. She should not be.
She's done it.
Yeah,
go
you're good.
We got it. We understand your policies by now.
You're good. So, and I think we're seeing that just across the board, and just like, okay, well, what's really going on?
Yeah, like you brought the Jamie Foxx thing. Like that's extremely weird because this is somebody that loves the spotlight. This is somebody that loves to talk. This is somebody that's one of the most socially active people that I know. Like I literally know him, right? And so to see how hush-hush he is about it, it just doesn't add up, doesn't make sense. I mean, there's so many, thoughts and, things that go into that situation. I mean, some people think he's already passed away and, it's so unknown, which for him, I mean, he can be taking his time to rest and get back to health. That's one option, but the other option is for somebody that's been so socially active, and I mean, one of the people that, he still loves to party, likes to hang, he likes to talk, he likes to be in the scene, to not say anything publicly, it's weird too. So I mean, you talk about this society and this time being just a weird time, and then you have people choosing sides. Like, why can't we all sit down, have a real conversation? I like to talk about this, but have a real conversation where one side is not saying it is what it is, and the other side is not saying it is what it is, but we're trying to see what it really is, uncover and really get to the bottom of what's going on together and have a cohesive conversation about it. Until then, there's always going to be, sides and people choosing what side to be on, which I think at this time in history, the movement from 2021 to now forced us to choose sides. And so let's have a conversation of how we can, right the ship together. And until we have that conversation, it's going to be a lot of this speculation.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's always been divisiveness. I mean,
sure.
But it's really interesting how I perceive things from back when I was younger And even to the start of the 2000s, right? So in 99 and the Gore Bush election and Gore really coming out strong. I think it was probably 1998 he came out really strong with the climate change and the global warming and how this was a big factor in what was going on in the world. And I don't know if it was my age or my... I really don't know, but it really it started to affect me, and I started to really feel like, oh my gosh, that's what's happening. That's why the earth is getting warmer. That is why all these things are terrible. And yes, there is massive pollution and there's all sorts of things, and we are a consumer reality. We're in absolute consumerism of all times in history. But are humans really, I mean, at this point in time, it's like, are humans really responsible for the warming effect that's happening on the earth? And then, flash forward to now and then seeing how that propaganda, because that's exactly what it was. It's propaganda used for something else. And what was that something else? That something else was then to, start all sorts of different new industries, which I think there's great innovations that have come.
Right.
But at the same time, it's like we're forcing everybody to go electric, and we're forcing everybody to go these one way of doing everything. And that one way is not effective. It cannot be effective for the massive population of the earth. And we all know that.
Right.
And I think that that's where it comes down to, like, what have we been believing that wasn't really accurate or wasn't really the truth, but it was to propel a different agenda?
Well, we think like that, but okay, so all those thoughts, but what made you change from that? Like, what steered you down a different lane?
Okay.
And see, this is why we can have these same stories, this stuff be true.
Yes.
You go that way and somebody else still stays there and believes it.
Right. And I think what made me change from this was when I started to really question. Now, I come from a family where my brother is very, very deep in the uncovering of the deep state. So I already have this kind of interesting background knowledge, but I never believed any of it. I never trusted any of it. It hurt my feelings when he said what he had to say about Obama and the Clintons back in 2015, and so a lot of these things were very personal things to me, because I tend to be very political. I like politics. I like justice. I like fairness. It's a big thing for me. I like the truth. I strive for those things, and so. For a long time, not was just a skeptic, I just didn't see it. And then, when 2020 happened, we met right in that beginning. So we actually even spoke about things that were of that other mindset back in that time. And what ended up happening for me was my own intuition, and not just intuition. I have always had a really strong compass. So I have a very deep inner knowing of truth, and I can feel truth, and I can feel authenticity, and I literally feel it in my body. And so it was this knowing that there was something really not of the truth. And so it started to uncover all these other things for me, where everybody wanted to blame Trump for everything. And I was totally against Trump, totally had the same viewpoints. And then it just started to uncover, like, wait a second, this isn't making sense. It just didn't make sense. And if anybody who had common sense would see would be able to see very clearly that there was just complete funny business going on. And I call it funny business because it's a nice way to put it, but like legit, like it didn't add up.
Yeah, but then that's the thing again, right? It's in your inner world. So if your inner world is a little shaken, then you're kind of forced to look at yourself in the mirror and you start to look at things and dissect things a little differently. And I think during that time, people were so scared,
Yes.
living in so much fear.
Yes.
How am I going to get through this process
100%.
unscathed, right?
100%.
So you're operating from a fear-based knowing, understanding, ground level. You're walking in fear, right? So the government, they're trying to save us. They're telling us this thing is out there. They're telling us it's going to wipe us out, blah, 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 all the things that they're saying. Now, they're losing jobs. People are doing all these certain things where, they can't even operate. They can't feed their families. And, all these situations are happening, right? So being forced to stay inside. You're told to retreat from the world. And so you're having this natural disconnection that's happening with the world. And you're only receiving the knowledge, the news, all the sources of the information that was coming in from a couple of main sources, right? People are getting these same things. And if you don't know yourself, you don't understand vibration, you don't understand energy, and you don't understand your own intuition, your own knowing, and you're operating from somebody else's information and what they're telling you, then you could see why some people were so scared and operating the way they were, coming from, compassion and empathy. You can see that. But you can also see that, certain things that happen in our lifetimes, years and years before, have shown that this type of fear mongering has happened throughout the years and
for
before,
sure.
right? And so you can see that, I can see that, because really, the stuff that we were seeing and what they were saying didn't add up. We didn't see people bleeding out the eyes and falling down and passing out right away. So
that and that's Ebola, right? So I hate to say this, I've done so much reading as a kid because I didn't have a television. So I read the most gruesome, weird books when I was a kid, and a lot of books about germs and books about just how the body decomposes. But really, I read this amazing book, and I will have to post the title because I'm not remembering it at the moment, but it was about the Ebola virus. And about how it takes over the body and what exactly happens. And it happens particularly in small places in Africa, which we're all pretty privy to. But I kept thinking that is what they're projecting this as. They're projecting it as Ebola. Now, Ebola does all of those things. It eats your insides from inside, and you start to bleed out. It's horrifying. Right? And people, and they just die in the street. It's very, very dramatic.
Dramatic and traumatic. If you saw somebody just
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's been one of those things for me. Like, okay, if it's Ebola, I'm out.
I am staying inside.
I am definitely out. So it wasn't showing that way.
No.
It never showed up even in the slightest bit that way. Now, I'm not saying people weren't dying.
I was just about to, yes, for sure.
Or people weren't, these strains weren't horrific.
Sure.
But how had they been genetically modified? And I love pointing this out, to be that way.
Right.
It just doesn't play out as a naturally occurring virus. And anybody who has done the research even on the Black Plague,
right.
I mean, the Black Plague wasn't a naturally occurring bacteria. The Black Plague literally came from fleas that had a sort of malfunction where they were no longer able to keep all the blood in their body. And so every time they bit someone else, some of the blood from the other person would eject into the next person.
Right.
So it was like these weren't even. It's just such a interesting way that it was, played out in America, but also around the world. This was a world event.
This is a world event, yeah.
And I think too, having the astrology for me. And having great astrologers around me, thank God, I was able to see that everything I felt and everything I was like seeing was played out in the same lines of what was actually happening and playing out because it was supposed to be a worldwide event, and it was.
Mm-hmm. No, it's world. Yeah, I mean, and then you have your astrologers, you have people around you. I didn't have that. I had myself, my own knowing, my own intuition, and then you come into my life and kind of have those same point of views, and it was like, oh, okay, so I'm not alone. It gave me a chance to actually be able to talk these things through as well. I mean, I was probably going to be forced, which I still wouldn't have done, as as an entertainer, as an actor. I mean, I had to, either get the, get the vaccine or not for work. And so you start having these things where they're trying to force it on you. For me, as someone that never has fit in the box or has tried to fit in the box, it's like, whenever somebody is doing something all in one direction, for me, I always pause it anyway. So I think my natural selection when it comes to stuff like that, my natural inclination is to pause before that happens and really see what it is. So I think having that wherewithal in me anyway, it kind of helped to steer me away from some of the things I wouldn't want to do normally.
Well, I think there's definitely certain types of people that are, we rebel against authoritarianism.
Just say authority. Authoritative figures.
There you go.
There you go. Something like that.
Yes, we rebel against authority for sure. And it's if somebody tells you to do something, it's my first thought of why.
Yeah, you got it.
No.
Yeah, especially
I automatically want to say no.
It's just when it's masses. If it's something that everybody's saying is good or everybody's saying anything about, like if it's a lot of people saying it.
I think it's just
I know what you mean. I know authority. There's certain things about authority that needs to be in place, and so I could see those things where I'm not always anti-authority. You're not always anti-authority.
Sure.
So I'm saying it's authority, sure, but it's this thing where I know, if somebody's trying to lead me anywhere, I need to know where I'm going. I'm not just following. And that's really what it boils down to.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, then, that makes sense.
Yeah. It's not just authority.
Mine's like an innate no. Like I just, like if somebody just came up to you and said, hey, would you, do this? It's like a straight no. No. It will not feel good. And I know that. Yeah. If I feel it and it does not feel good at a smidge, I want to know why and got to figure that out. Yeah. Where, some people are more prone to do it, more prone to follow the masses. So, yeah. Well, and I think people feel safer.
They do.
They feel a lot safer when someone else is telling them what to do. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's just even from why our government has gotten away with so much. I was just watching a movie last night called The Four Horsemen, which was really interesting because it just went into the which is apocalyptic, right? The Four Horsemen is very apocalyptic. Yeah. And
you watching scary movies at night by yourself?
No. It was a documentary.
Okay.
And it was basically talking about, in the beginning, it started talking about the fall of Rome, which I think America always gets compared to the Roman Empire, like majorly compared.
Okay, before you finish making your point. So you talk about the Roman Empire, you talk about the government, right? They were doing so many malicious things, but they would give crumbs, drop breadcrumbs for their people. Okay. And so we want to tie it all together with what's going on now in American football, right? So in Roman times, it would be the gladiators. Same situation. We would confuse them. We would give them joy. We would give them a moment of time to deflect, to lose interest maybe in the grand scope of what's going on, in the government from the Roman time to now. Yes. And how do we do that? How as leaders or how do people in charge of people, how do we keep them entertained? How do we keep them not worried about what's really going on globally? Yeah, let's give them sports. Let's give them the gladiators, which American football is. It's gladiators. It's the same thing. Now you got a gladiator like Damar Hamlin, who's one of the ones that they're putting on the pedestal now to lead the revolution of the new revolution of whatever they're trying to get across, right? And so that's that. It happened in live TV. The world saw it. Now we can move whatever agenda we're trying to move forward, and it's the same thing. So it's interesting you said the Roman Empire. So that's similar.
Yes. Well, there was a lot of reference to that, and basically, but there's been a lot of reference during this whole time because of even back in the astrology of it, it's the Pluto return for America. So when the Roman Empire had its Pluto return, it fell, and it fell hard. And it was some of the same things that they were. You get to such a place of wealth, such a place of, I don't even know how to describe it, but like ease, if you will, that they start doing things just to do them. Like they used to make celebrities out of their chefs. Well, that's what we've been doing, right? Celebrity chefs. Gender became not a thing, right?
True.
That was the thing they keep talking about. And how in America we're seeing these same things kind of go down, right? And so what does that mean to have the fall of America, right? It's just it seems like, how can America fail? It's like it's too big to fail type of a thing.
Yeah. But I think that means...
But we're being put in a place now where we are, so, in my perspective, so vulnerable, whether it's mostly in war, and going against people that and countries that I don't think we should have any business aligning ourselves with. And I don't think we have any business messing around with relations with Russia, China, or, I hate to, pretty much anyone else. Just the U.S. really needs to start to take care of its own and take care of its own people.
All right. Well, tell your people what the definition of failing means as a as
falling or
falling.
fail?
You said failing or falling. Which one you said?
Both. Like it's both.
What's failing? What's failing as for America? What would that? No, let's say falling. What's falling like? What's the definition of that? What does that look like?
So we are a capitalistic society, right? We've been running on capitalism for all of the time since 1776,
right?
And even prior. A lot of our taxation was put into place from the UK, and we started to take on Europeans' taxation, which we were never meant to be taxed on our income. So what's happening and what's going to be happening is the failing of our financial structure and our financial systems. And when that happens, I don't think anybody is really truly prepared for how that kind of changes everything. And it changes America as it's the greatest power in the world.
Right.
We're right there, number one. We're falling so fast. It's happening now. Yeah. This is like in real time. This isn't like, it's coming in 2024. I think you're going to see more obvious things indicating that.
Well, yeah, you hear the value of the dollar is dropping, right?
Well, but the value of the dollar is beyond dropping. Yeah. We are no longer, when they took away the gold standard in the 1970s and made it fiat currency, we started to learn that we can print our own money in banks and it doesn't have to be backed by anything. Well, what that causes is high levels of inflation that then we can't even keep up with what things cost. Right. We're seeing places renting for $10,000 a month that you wouldn't even want to go get into the bathtub. They're not even,
correct.
They're not horrible, but it's just like $10,000 a month. You would think you'd be living on, I don't know.
A castle in the clouds.
A castle in the clouds. But it's like a normal home.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so bizarre to me that this has moved the progression of it's been so fast. It's like within 2 years, this is kind of played out. So the fall or failing is really our financial structures failing, and to the point where we are going to have to do a severe, heavy restructure, and it's going to take us back to not being the superpower of the world, which I don't think we really need to be honest with you. But it's been nice.
It's been nice. We had a nice run, guys.
It's been nice being raised, during that time, especially the 90s. I feel like the 90s were such a incredible time period where the middle class was really doing well.
Yeah.
And, our parents all had jobs, or they all could afford a home. Maybe it wasn't the fanciest home, but it was like,
definitely a home.
Oh, this is good.
As a kid, I was like, this is nice.
Feeling like it was,
Yeah.
But then when you learn that our banks basically take our money and then they gamble it in the number one casino, which is Wall Street, we are really shooting ourselves in the foot.
We're going for it. We're swinging for the fences.
It's like they don't even have the money. Which,
I mean, yes, obviously, bank branches are being bought out, obviously, and losing their structure. So I mean, it's talk about the big monopoly. Like these guys are coming in to try to monopolize situations, and it's super high class or low class. The middle class pretty much doesn't exist anymore. So it's a tough time in general. But that's a hard one for me because it's crazy when you talk about the 90s. Like obviously I come from a Democratic home, and and seeing the benefits of that, and seeing the structure of how that worked and how it made more people welcome in its entirety. But then somebody like myself who graduated from that and then started to be in a different tax bracket and see things from a different point of view, it's always one of those things where, again, we can bring it back and make this all encompassing, right? Me being able to have these two different views of the world, even financially, right? To see that and see how it exists and see how I lean to, more of a Republican view of things when I had, these things, and, being able to have these, have these two different views of what it looks like. I say all that to say it's where we started, right? We have these views, and I think until you have the experience of, or the eye-opening experience or a situation that happens for you to be able to take in all these layers of what this world really brings to the table, then you're going to be in one lane and stay there because it works for you. But now, even having the stuff fall and having situations happen that we're looking at this like, this is alarming, this is crazy. People are calling it, they just think it's a normal thing. That's the part where it gets a little disheartening for me, because it's, yes, all these things are happening. It doesn't mean they're normal. It just means it's happening. And what are you going to do about it? And I think more people need to take action and get to the bottom of what can happen to make this thing feel good again, because it doesn't feel good. And if it doesn't feel good, which we talked about earlier, there's something's awry. And I think as a nation, all of us need to know that something is awry. And I think some people don't feel that way. They think it's just normal.
They're good with, You
know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a lot of apathy. It's apathy. And I get it. There's so much information to take in that you kind of max yourself out, right? So it's easier not to pay attention than to pay attention. And hey, to each his own. I really do want to, I think for me, my own, and my, and for you, just to understand a little deeper based on how people can have the exact same information and come to a totally different conclusion, or trust one thing and not trust another. It's my hope I start to understand this deeper. But also, we all have our own experiences. So it could just be
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
that's the way we're supposed to experience
That's
it.
the compassionate view of it. That's how I am. I see it. I can see it that way and not.
Yeah, it's funny because we love Disney so much, and when I say Disney, I mean Disneyland.
Yes.
I love Disneyland so much just because it's so deeply embedded in my programming from childhood.
Exactly.
Our programming.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't even know if it's programming. It's been more of like my delight of childhood and my delight still today. There's something very tangible that I get out of it that goes beyond something I'm taking home. I'm not buying a bunch of stuff there.
Well, you buy a few things.
I buy pins. Kara will attest to my Pocahontas pin collection.
Yes.
But she is the most hard to find.
She is hard. She is rare.
I feel like she's valuable.
She's rare.
And she's literally the only historical figure they've ever done a Disney movie on and based a Disney princess off of, a real historical figure. So
right.
You have to give me Pocahontas.
Oh my God.
Anyways.
Make you smile thinking about it. That's a shame.
What I was getting to was we can see Disney for what it is and how magical it can be, but also, when we were there recently, just noticing how dark it actually is as well. It's very interesting how they use sorcery and just like dark magic to spell you.
Right in front of your face. You're watching the fireworks and just all of a sudden like,
what is this?
What's going on? Why is it all red? And why is the music changed to this? Because this frequency is a little scared. Like it's right in between. It's a small world after all. Then it's boom. And it's like, oh, that's intense. It's a lot. That's a lot. But I think, again, the experience of Disney for us is it's a little bit of escapism. It's something that we can do together that we enjoy and for different reasons. But it's a place, and I think again, with life in general, there are sweet spots and stuff even that could potentially be sorcery or darkness if you are in tune with yourself and you can feel that. But I don't know if everybody has that capability. And I think that's why it's almost like the blind leading the blind.
I just feel like it's seeing beyond the veil, right? Mm-hmm. It's opening the curtain and seeing what's really going on. Because I think that there's so much that is actually going on under the curtain that we just wash over because it's not really visible.
Yeah.
Right?
But again, yes, it's not visible. It is the feeling, which we both kind of we talk about a lot. It's the feeling. Like how can you? I mean, people are so busy, and the world is. I mean, so many people are trying to crawl and scratch to even make ends meet, so they're not able to see that. And so that's why empathy runs strong with me in those situations. But it's just like, people, please wake up and see this. I know I'm not the only one. I know you're not the only one that sees this and feels this, which, as we can see, as we continue to go down that path, I mean, there are other people that are like us and have that approach to seeing things for what they really are. But just as humanity, as people that really care about other people rising above it, or whatever the direction it is that you're trying to get out of this homeostasis situation where everybody's in the same boxed in place. It's like, just take a little time to see it. And I know it's hard because some people don't have that time, but I think there's time. I think there's time you can find spaces in there to uncover this thing.
Right. And that's uncovering what's going on, like, even with Disney and the programming that continues to happen. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Or just everything in general?
Everything in general, but Disney as well, for sure. Disney's, We've talked about that. I've told you that for a while about some of the little things.
Disney's going to bat with Ron DeSantis over what's going on in Florida. But here's the thing. I think, and Disney World or Disney just in general, just basically pulled out of a huge, they were going to build a campus
project,
for all their employees. It was going to employ 2,000 people in Florida, blah, blah, blah. And they just pulled out of it and they said, oh, it's because of Ron DeSantis. And I'm just like, no, it's not. It's not because of Ron DeSantis. It's, and that's just my claircognizant
gut feeling.
No, it's my claircognizant ability to say that no, Disney's struggling. They are
struggling.
They're closing their Star Wars hotel, which they opened last year or opened it this year.
No, it's been 18. Well,
has it been 18
months? Yeah.
And we saw it when it was being built, and
so a year and a half.
It was a fully immersive hotel, which I love the concept. I really love the concept, but do I want to be just stuck in Star Wars, my whole Disney experience? Not really.
Not the whole time.
I think that's why that's why they're closing it. I think it wasn't enough people.
But that's crazy when you think about it. The cost in building and making that situation, and then a year and a half later just
scrapping it. And that's gonna be one of Disney's greatest.
That's a massive failure.
Fails. Which is unfortunate. Yeah. So I tend to think that this was a business decision that they released during a time where DeSantis is going to say he's running for president. But I don't think it really had to do with what he's doing there as governor. Though I do think he is messing with businesses, and he has and I hate to say, and I might agree with him on a lot of politics, but I definitely disagree with what he's done in regards to someone's sovereignty in their business, because it's really just going against what we've been saying all along. Like, if you don't want to be told what to do, then you should not be telling them what to do, and then taking away their benefits. I believe Disney World in Florida has brought more traffic to Florida than any other company.
For sure. For sure.
And it has for a long time.
For a long time.
So.
I mean, I went for my senior trip. Disney World! Other kids were going to party. We were at Disney World.
Oh, yeah. So, you got lucky. Yeah. I got sent to Cancun in a... I mean, I don't know who sends their 17-year-old and 18-year-old daughters to Cancun, but
it happened.
That happened. And we're lucky we all made it back alive.
That was just all, I was wholesome at Disney. All wholesome.
And I would have much rather. That would have been, sign me up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't need to be on a booze cruise. It wasn't my.
That's
not my jam.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, 17.
17
at the time?
Yeah, 17. And all the other girls my age were drunk and in bars and Jello shots and the whole thing, and it was much. I luckily had a best friend. Her name was Jessica Turman, and she hung out with me most of the time, and we would find little restaurants and go get like a glass of wine, and we felt like all grown up and mature. But thank God for her, because I was miserable. Yeah, so that's just a side note.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like fun. Didn't sound like fun.
No. So do you think that, and this is kind of maybe where we can wrap it up and have like a little bit of an end note, but do you think that there's something happening where we're living on two different, almost perceived realities, where some people, or some humans are living over here and some are living over here, and they're experiencing two different things?
Yeah, for sure.
And could that be based upon fear? Because I know that we talk about how they brought fear in strong in 2020, and this was a whole kind of fear mongering thing.
Yeah.
But there's definitely stuff on even my side, and this other perspective of how things are, I don't know, more malicious or more divisive than what's being shown, or more there's underlying stuff, there's more going on, right? Well, that can be fear as well too. When you feel like, oh my gosh, I don't actually know what's going on. That could be fearful.
Well,
it's like, I don't know.
Well, I don't know if it's more fearful for you, or you just can't, or you're not in control. I think there's a level of where fear and control kind of runs hand in hand. If you're fearful of something, in theory, you're probably not going to do it. So if you're not going to do it, you're not in control of your destiny or what's going on. So I think, just my opinion, when you're controlled or ruled by fear, there are certain things that you're going to stay away from. You're not going to do, because I'm fearful of what the outcome comes if I do this thing, right? So I would think it's more about control in the sense of talking about somebody who's been a control freak for a big part of my life, right? And then stepping out of that and being able to, still have, moments of it, but stepping out of that and being able to see it from like this bird's eye view of, all right, I remember when I could control this situation, or I could, and when you talk about control, that's also an ounce of manipulation in there, right? When you're controlling something, you're trying to do something to the best outcome that you think it should be. So that's not something that's a universal thing. That's something that you're feeling. If I control something, I'm controlling the fun, I'm controlling what's going on in this room, blah, 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 blah. Like, that's manipulation to the core as well. So you can have that from politicians, governments, and all that stuff. Where does that happen? Of course. They're trying to have, if you're trying to have something in order, or have something, have a government function the way that the government says it's supposed to function, then it has to be control and manipulation in it. Because if you don't have people in line with that because of fear, if I do this, if I go steal something outside, prior to 2020, 2021, you would go to jail. And now people are going and raiding stores and stealing all this material and up to a certain number and not being even jailed. Like, you're seeing these wild videos of people going in malls and Gucci and these big stores and just stealing stuff, and the employees letting them walk out, security guards letting them walk out. Like, there's no real crime or punishment. So that's a huge.
That was a whole other thing with
it's a whole thing going on.
The commissioners being changed in 2020, which happened in Chicago, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and I believe Detroit. And probably Manhattan. I can't confirm that, but
you can take all these.
That's what was happening, and they basically did. I don't even know if it was a silent election. I don't even know how it happened, but they came into power during that time, and what they've been doing is something called compassionate. It's like compassionate policing or whatever. So where they have compassion. So like, if you don't make enough money to post bail, they let you out for free.
Really?
Yes. Yes, because you don't have the income to pay the bail.
Right.
Some people would look at that and say, oh, that's fair. Well, I say that's completely unfair, and I don't believe that people, even with money, if it's certain crimes, should be able to have bail. I'm so opposite.
If you do the crime, you do the time.
You do the time. But I'm also a huge advocate for the death penalty, and I know that's really not a liberal stance. But I believe if you harm a child, or if you purposely do horrible, heinous acts, I believe you should.
So premeditated.
Why should us American people as taxpayers pay for someone to continue to live and pay for their housing for the rest of their life? I mean, Charles Manson, it's a perfect example. There's no reason he should have just been. They just kept him going, kept him going. I mean, it was just like the most obvious crime.
Yeah.
It wasn't even just obvious. He admitted it.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't.
It wasn't like a so those situations I do not believe
Deserve remorse.
there should be a redemption quality.
Redemption.
I mean, it's just like time's up. Like, okay.
Yeah.
Because there's no punishment. So if you are to do something horrible, whether it's you're going to steal a bunch of stuff from the store, you should definitely have to pay for it. Yeah. Whether it's you're going to jail and being taken off the streets as a punishment, or it's financially pay it back.
Something.
But it should not just be like you can just, hey, it's the Wild West. But it's turned back into the Wild West. The Wild, Wild West.
Exactly.
So,
and the fact that they're allowing it, one, but also showing it. This is the part that I want people to understand. It's not about all the things that are going on. Things have been going on throughout, humanity forever. Things go on. Things happen. But now we're privy to all this information, right? So everything is so, media driven. And, when they were showing all the stuff of people, all these black people getting killed and all the stuff that was going on at that time, why were they, I remember asking myself, why are they showing this? Why are they releasing this footage? The shooters in schools now, they're showing this footage. Have they shown the school shooting? They showed the one, or I think was she a transgender? The one that went in the school and so they showed the footage of her shooting out the windows, coming in, looking around, looking in different rooms to find people. Like they're releasing these videos now where they didn't do that.
I think they eventually released the video of Dylan and I don't even remember the other guy's name, but the Columbine shootings.
They did?
Yeah, they did. They released them walking. They did.
Yeah, they're doing this.
I remember they did the security videos. But I mean, there was the shooting that happened in Texas.
Yeah.
Remember? And it was so weird. They called the police and the police were there and it was like a whole thing where it was like,
no, even
are you kidding me? They didn't even go in. They could have gone in and taken I think it was a boy, right? It was a boy. It was a boy, yeah. A boy who had maybe, but the link between all of these, whether it's mentally disturbed or not, has been that every single one of them has been on an antidepressant. That was what was it's so alarming because so much of our youth, including my own son, has been prescribed antidepressants. And with Jack, it's like he knows he shouldn't be taking one, but they prescribe it to him saying, this is for anxiety, this is for this, and then go, oh, okay, well, I'll try it. And then he ends up having having remorse for taking it and then trying to get off of it.
And leads back to what I said in the beginning. You prescribe to something, then there's the prescription. And then after that, what's the next step? Either you've learned your lesson, you've graduated to a point where you don't need that anymore, and I'm going to go seek this alternative way of thinking, or am I going to stay dependent on the prescription? And the prescription is the government right now. That's the people who, really don't see anything wrong. You put all of them in that prescription thing,
right?
How did we get out of that? Well, and that's how I kind of break it down when I look at it. You prescribe to something, you get the prescription, and then what's the solution? What's the answer to that after? Because if you're in this loop where you're dependent on something, you're dependent on one source of something for information or relief, I'm going to stay there because it's comfortable. Or am I going to stop doing this because I know the side effects are bad? Am I going to move forward and get help or learn something, an alternative way of looking at it, and possibly be really free of all these things, or fall back into that loop of comfortability? And that's where it goes. That's how I break it down when I think about it.
It's a good analogy for sure. But when you talk about the government being the prescription, I think big pharma and the government are the most connected. And when have we ever been
I got your wheels
thought,
turned, huh?
well, no, when have we ever thought, like, because big pharma, we've been told, and I think this is where part of this brainwashing comes in. Big pharma before 2020, we've been told is horrible. It's like, oh, don't trust them. They're lobbying, they're controlling, and they're in control of all this money and all this stuff. They're prescribing things, over-prescribing, the opioid epidemic, all sorts of things that they get away with, right? Prior to 2020. And then now it's like brainwashing. Like, oh, this is safe to take. Oh, this is safe to take. Even though the side effects are immense, a lot of times they say, like rectal bleeding.
Warning.
Like,
if you take
I think we're good.
Yeah.
But people still think that there's something good that comes out of taking something. And we much rather be pilled than try to find out what the real source of the issue is.
Yeah, just be numb to it. I don't want to just be numb to anything.
Right. So that's and then prior to 2020 it was also, keep your kids off screen time, limit computers, limit this, limit that. And then it was like, they have to be on 7 hours a day on the school with the teacher on the Zoom. And it's like, what? No. You see your kid go from kind of, normal to like hyperactive because they've been sitting in front of a screen for the full day.
Right.
It's lunacy. And so the level of kind of this effect that's happened over the course of 3 years is so high. And it's just, it's almost like we're just watching a circus show. And so the best thing I could say to anyone out there, listening, or who this makes any sense to, is just be aware. Like, just be aware of what you're being presented with information-wise, even with what we're saying, and start to open your mind to alternative solutions.
That's it.
And alternative perspectives, because I really truly believe that the more information and the more knowledge we have about just also anything that we're subscribing to, we're programmed by, the greater understanding we'll have to what's really going on. So
Yep, I agree. Yeah, it's a fun time. Right? I think we're going through.
Well, it is North Node Taurus right now. I mean, it's still a really beautiful. You can have the most amazing things come out of this time frame, and the most amazing truths and just beautiful experiences. I truly believe that.
So,
but I also think that there needs to be a little bit more awareness around things that we so easily just buy, consume, and subscribe to. So that's all. Thank you.
That's it?
Thank you so much for
You're welcome.
joining me.
Always.
In
Always join you.
Yeah. In our numerous talks. All right.
For sure. All right, guys, have a good one. It was a beautiful time spent with Ashlan, and we enjoy talking about these things. So it's normal for us, but hopefully you guys were able to get something from it, take something from it, and hopefully apply it. But if not, at least spark an interest, and you get to start to do your own research and your own work on this thing, because it's needed and it's also valuable. So that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, the more minds opening up and connecting,
For sure.
the better. So, thank you.